Hi, and welcome to Week 5, Chapter 5, Children, Yes or No. Now, one of the primary functions of family is to have children. And in this chapter, we're going to look at various issues surrounding this task. The recent trend is the Canadian family is shrinking, and there are sociological reasons for this. Parents are having fewer children. Some couples decide not to have children. Not all pregnancies are planned or wanted, and there are several options available to those parents who find themselves in this situation, including abortion, adoption, and foster care. Other couples may intensely want children but are unable to conceive. For these prospective parents, adoption is still an option, but advances in reproductive technology such as IVF and surrogacy make having a biologically related child more possible. But these procedures also arouse several ethical and social issues. So, enlarging the family circle. There are various reasons, both personal and social, for having children. Having children is somewhat of a matter in our society. It's a marker. It's the thing that we sort of aim to have. In the symbolic interactionalist perspective, it's the giving of a sakar and having showers for marking that you're having your first child or having a child. Status and the important developmental tasks. In the past, limited choice, have children or not. With changes in the law and easy contraception, availability of abortion, prenatal diagnosis, and technology to assist conception, there are many more options. Fertility in Canada has been changing over time. Not only is marriage declining, so is having children. Fertility is the number of children born and the average age of childbearing. Now, this is, as many of you can imagine, can really affect Canadian population and the demographics. Fertility rate represents the total number of children a woman is expected to have over the course of her reproductive life. Currently, to replace the population of Canada, that rate is 2.1 children per reproductive fertile women. Now, we have moved from large families in rural existence at the turn, at around Confederation, if you will, and families looked after themselves. There was no welfare, there was no old age pension. Children were expected to help. More children was better at that time, 5.6 children per woman in 1851. And as we move to the turn of the century, 20th century, therefore early 1900s, families began to shrink. And as families moved to cities, women gained the right to vote and began to enter the higher education, but in small numbers. The Great Depression and World War II had a big influence on Canadian families. By 1937, the total fertility rate was 2.64 per woman. After the war, there was an increase in the economics, the post-war bump, as it would be. So the economic picture, men returned from war, families were reunited, babies were born. Thus, what we now know as the baby boom. And it peaked at 3.94 children per woman in 1954. So just about 4 children compared to just under or just around the 2 children today. With the advent of increased availability of contraception, the decline of religion, and the increase of women in post-secondary education led to a decline in fertility through the 60s. By 2011, the fertility rate sat at 1.61 children per woman. The general trend over the past 40 years has been declining. We are older when beginning our families today. Another term used to describe family growth or decline is crude birth rate. Crude birth rate. There's better. And that's the number of live births during a particular year of 1,000 people in a population. So crude birth rate has been declining since the 1970s. We have attempted to compensate for the decline in several ways. One, family allowance program where money for children under 16. It was a modest amount, but it offered during the baby boom, and it may have had a limited impact. Immigration. To replace population, additional issues, well, there's a fertility rate are cultural, so if our rate is low, immigration is used as a means of increasing the population, and it uses a point system to promote work skills, education, and the likely late to the children-bearing game. Immigrants affected by acculturalization, they adopt a new country's fertility rate, or immigrants immigrating may postpone children to settle into the new country. Clearly, in Canada, family size is shrinking. Why is the Canadian family shrinking? And the next 3 points are separate than what you might what we just explored. Having fewer children and starting late is starting late in life to have children. So instead of having children at age, say, 21, 22, 23, we're having them at age 30, 32, 33. So let's look at some of the issues. We're going to look predominantly at some social factors influencing family size, and we'll look at education. We'll start with, more frequently, women are putting off having children in order to get an education. It leads to better careers, both education and career, of which can also delay having children until they get established, education passed, and career started. Employment. It used to be that family had one wage earner, typically men. Today, not so much. Today, two wage earners is becoming necessary, and two incomes. So as you may know, more women working, that would also suggest a lower fertility rate. Medical science has had a big impact. It's responsible for two big impacts on child birth rate. One, the pre- and postnatal care. As a result, there are fewer examples of infant mortality, which is the number of deaths of children in the first year of life. And two, contraception. In the 1960s, the pill came out and had a huge impact on the lowering of birth rates. Some financial reasons: the average cost to raise a child to age 18, $250,000, has gone to $284,000, and it could be one reason why we create fewer children. The educational costs can be added to that. And then there's individual choices. The area is very broad and mixed. What can we say is that in spite of the individual or couple reasons, these can be many and varied, family size is still shrinking. The quality of the relationship, stability of finances, they're all, the overall health, all contribute to this decline. There is, and it's been referenced earlier in this semester, the social script. There is still a great deal of social pressure to have children and follow the social script. One such pressure comes from the myth of motherhood, which says that that motherhood is an instinct that can fulfill a woman in a way that no other experience can. There's more to that than just that particular part of the myth. Now, another part of the myth that's important is having children of each sex. Without these points, the family is felt to be incomplete. Now, we know that's not necessarily the case. However, that still has vestiges being held in some family groups. Some unmarried women choose to have children without a long-term partner, fulfilling the myth of motherhood? Maybe. Family planning is the process of intentionally deciding the number and the timing of births. This includes when or if to use contraception, abortion, adoption, fertility testing, and or treatment. We'll do a quick review of the social perspectives on having children. The structural functional is focused on having children as a necessary function of family in perpetuating society. Clear and simple. You get married, you have children, and that's beneficial to society. The developmental approach sees having children as a developmental task of most families. Conflict theories, they suggest social pressures to have children reflect prevailing ideology of society, how families with children have greater social advantages than those without. Systems theory looks at how decisions to have children creates different subsystems that affect the family dynamic. The ecological approach looks at how the wider social context influences the decisions to have children. It also determines experiences of families with children. And symbolic interactionalists, they focus on the face-to-face, on the personal reasons for not having children and that dynamic between the couple or the couple and their family. The feminists, they tend to study childbearing as an issue reflecting women's control over reproduction. Now that's a quick overview of the first part, and we'll continue with the second part in part 2. Carry on and keep up the good work, everybody.